Welcome to the Real Talk with Megan podcast, where we have candid conversations about the things that matter most. I'm your host, Megan, and we're going to deep dive into the topic of mental health. Together, we'll work to destigmatize mental health and start conversations. So sit back, grab a cup of coffee, and get ready for a real and raw conversation about mental health on the Real Talk with Megan podcast. Today, we have a special guest with us, Emily Hill. And so, Emily, thank you for being here today. And I would love if you could just introduce yourself a little bit.
Yeah, I'm so excited to join you. So, I am Emily. I am a wife, a mom. I'm a licensed social worker, a hospice chaplain, and recently an author and speaker. So, I kind of dabble in a lot of things. I say I'm a jack of all trades, master of none. It feels like some days. But I love the opportunity to kind of chat in different places and spaces that allow for just real conversations about faith and grief and loss and good things too. I like talking about happy things too, but I've had my own grief kind of intertwined with my profession that sort of lives in the space of grief. So it's just been something that I've become more and more comfortable with sharing about and kind of just allowing opportunities for other people to hear my story and maybe it'll empower them to share their own. My favorite Bible verse has always been Romans 12:15, which is weep with those who weep, rejoice with those who rejoice. So I love just kind of being in areas that allow for both of those and are kind of safe spaces to share good, bad, and everything in between in life.
Absolutely. I'm like, you came to the right
Yeah.
place because we like to have real talk. It wouldn't be called
Mhm.
this if it wasn't.
Right.
And all around mental health and faith and breaking stigmas that come with that. One that just kind of popped in my head is like the stigma you can't have a bad day, right? We
Mhm.
can't have bad days as Christians, but that's okay. And grief and loss, like literally the Bible has lament. It's like
Mhm.
those are things we go through. So I think that's awesome that you're talking about it and opening that conversation for so many people that sometimes probably have a hard time talking about these things because it's maybe not normal emotions that they want to talk
Mhm.
about. And that's definitely, you're around that grief and loss a lot just with your work, like you were talking about. But then in your own life, dealing with that, did you see a difference in like how it hit you personally compared to like how others experienced it, or were there some similarities?
Yeah, so for me, I've always kind of been comfortable in the end of life space. My parents and family talk a lot about when my grandfather had cancer and he ended up in hospice care at home when I was about 7 years old. And I essentially moved in with my grandma. They made me a little nurse's cap, like a little origami nurse's cap, because I was there all the time. I would help feed him and read him stories. And I was just really um, just okay being there that close to end of life. And so it's always been an area that I've gravitated toward. So it's not been a surprise that I've ended up there in a
Yeah.
professional capacity. So I kind of thought I had it all figured out, right? Like I kind of thought I was
Yep.
like like an expert on grief. I, talk to people about it all the time. I give them tips and tricks to, navigate. And then for me, my father-in-law battled esophageal cancer and he did pass after a pretty difficult couple of years. And then shortly after that, I experienced a miscarriage a month after my husband's vasectomy. So,
Oh my goodness.
not to like, get too personal right off the bat, but it was like a really intense grief process. I was caught off guard by how deep the grief went
Yeah.
and kind of how poorly I handled it, if I'm being just perfectly honest. I spiraled into like a depth of despair that I've heard described in scripture but never quite experienced myself. Um
Yeah.
and I definitely struggled more than I would have thought that I would as a self-proclaimed expert on grief.
Hmm.
Because I think the reality is that no matter how much we think we know about it, there's going to be times in life and different losses for each of us, that do have the capacity to kind of knock us down and have us questioning a lot. And for me, it had me questioning my faith, my relationship with God, my understanding of who He was, my relationship with my husband, and like it really like pushed and challenged kind of all of that for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I resonate with the fact of like you sit across from people and you tell them things all the time. You're like, "This is great for you. You should do this." And I'm like, "I need to listen to my own advice sometimes." And I'm like, "Okay, God, like I see like this person's here because I need a reminder of some of these things
Right.
too." But it's so much harder to take our own advice than to help other
Hmm.
people. It's so much easier to be willing to help other people than to be like, yeah, I need to reach out for help too, or I need to,
Right.
step into something that's
Hmm.
uncomfortable in my own life. And so,
Hmm.
yeah, I completely resonate with that. But it's also very hard, and I'm sure you experience this as well, just from the little bit you talked about, but like to be honest about those feelings and to be honest about those emotions that hit you so hard, that despair you were talking about in like a church setting, in the church, in
Hmm.
a Christian community. Like, can you just talk why that feels so hard? I think that's something you've talked about, like you're passionate about. I
Yes.
am too, with that.
Yes.
So I'd love to just hear from you kind of your feelings on that and thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I love the local church. I was raised by a pastor. I've worked in professional ministry for over a decade now. And so I love the church, but I think that we're like super awkward when it comes to some of the difficult things in life. And, for me, I was raised very much in like a God is good all the time and all the time God is good
Mhm.
culture,
Yep.
which like facts, God is good all the time,
Yes.
like I
Absolutely.
don't disagree with that statement at all. Um, but I think sometimes that that mentality doesn't allow space for like real and raw experience in life.
Mm.
I think sometimes, and maybe this is, just a little bit of my personality also blending into it, but I felt um like it wasn't always okay for me to talk about how much I was struggling, especially in terms of how the grief um kind of disconnected me from God. Because I think a
Mhm.
lot of times we talk in church about like, yeah, lean into God, he'll get you through it, he'll walk with you through the
Yeah.
valley of the shadow of death, he'll like carry you when you can't walk. Like we love to talk about that and it's so true. And yet when I was dealing with grief, I couldn't find God no matter how hard I
Mm.
looked. And it's not that he
Yeah.
wasn't there, it's that like I was so immersed in the depths of the darkness that I was experiencing that I couldn't see him. I couldn't see him standing right in
Yeah.
front of me. I couldn't feel him embracing me in it. And to talk about that, even if I started to like hint around at it, I sort of felt like I started getting side eye, like,
Yeah.
and, like,
Oh,
and I talked about like being angry with God,
yeah.
and that like makes church people super uncomfortable, because like
Yep.
we we like instantly like cringe inside, like, oh, you can't do that. But what I had to learn was that God's cool with all of my emotions
Mm.
and he
Yeah.
wants me to bring that anger and that grief and that sorrow and all of that, the doubt too, like to him because like he'll deal with it and he'll, clap back at me when I need it and he'll like kind of like bring me through it. But to talk about that experience in real time felt so uncomfortable in the church community. And I think it's just because we probably don't talk about it enough.
Yeah. No, I 1000% am right there with you. And I think that could be said about so many mental health topics overall, like you're
Mhm.
saying. And it's something that's uncomfortable. And so we would sometimes rather not. It's the whole like when people are grieving and they're crying, like people are uncomfortable with the tears.
Mhm.
And then they just want to like create this like joy or something in them and be like, get
Right.
them to smile, get them to laugh, get them to stop crying. And I'm like, oh, stop it. Just let them cry. That emotion needs to
Right.
come out. Ugh.
Right. Yeah, sit in it, sit in it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, it's so true. Mental health, addiction, kind of all of those areas, I think, I think as Christians, we do know that God is the ultimate healer and comforter and provider and protector and guide. Like, we know all those things about him. So I do think when we approach things that could benefit from healing and comfort and guidance and provision, we're like, yes, I know a guy, like, let's fix this. And and it doesn't always work that way, and it's not always best that way. Like, healing takes time, and, God can heal in miraculous moments, but I think God is also a God of being with us through the entirety of the healing process, and to, like, try and speed it along with, like, a cool, like, Christian catchphrase or, like, a quick Bible verse, I think that takes away from, like, the true healing that God can really do in the process of grief and mental health and addiction and kind of all of those topics that we like to kind of speed walk through.
Yes. No, absolutely. And I love that, like, there are people like you and me, like, we're talking out about it. We're trying to get that ball rolling, so that
Mhm.
that doesn't it's not such a scary thing. It's not where, like, in turn, as you're the one hurting, then you're comforting the person who feels awkward. And that's not great
Mhm.
because then you're not able to
Right,
process and
right.
go through the emotions you need to. So I'm sure that when you were experiencing that, like, even when you said, like, you would kinda hint at it or things like that, like, what kind of other responses maybe did you get, when you maybe tried to share or tried to talk out about it?
So, I know, like, when I shared about the miscarriage, there was a lot like, a loving embrace, right? Like,
Yeah.
people would offer their best advice or, share their own stories, which is healing and comforting. Um, but then when I kind of started to go further and be like, but my husband and I are struggling, like, he's not experienced this grief in the same way I am. I kind of hate him right now. We're, considering
Yeah.
um, like, is our marriage gonna make it through this? Um, I distinctly remember a very close friend who their response was, "Well, you know that God doesn't support divorce."
Oh.
And it just, like, wrecked me,
Oh.
like, wrecked me to, like, the depths of my core, and I was like, "Yeah, I know that, like, I've read the Bible, I understand that, his vision for us is, like, marriage and connection through him, and, like, okay, cool, got it," like, um, but I just remember that, like, hitting so hard because it just completely missed sight of what I was really wanting them to
Yeah.
understand. And there's, other examples, but I think that one's always the one that, like, comes to mind of, like, yeah, that missed the mark.
Oh my
Like,
goodness.
good intentions, but, like, way off of what was actually, like, needed.
Yes, and I think that's a big thing too, is people feel like they have to say something, and I'm like, "You don't have to say anything, you can just be there, because otherwise you're gonna put your foot in
Mhm.
your mouth like that, where good intentions, not helpful whatsoever." Like, you said that, and, like, I
Right.
felt my heart just drop because I hate when I hear somebody have something like that said to them because 'cause I'm like, I know how painful things like that are. And I'm sure,
Mhm.
yes, that can completely wreck you even if you're trying to heal and work through that. That's so hard.
Mhm.
So maybe just a little piece of advice to everybody out there, like, you can just sit and listen or be still with someone, and just your presence
Mhm.
is good enough. You don't have to say anything.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely.
Okay, so all of this happens. People say things that aren't great. Um
Mhm.
And you start, taking steps to find healing for yourself. Because obviously, you know things, you know steps you need to take, you know those pieces. But
Mhm.
what were some of your first steps that you took into healing, or what were things that were extremely helpful for you?
Yeah, so I'm a huge advocate for needing both Jesus and a therapist in your life. Like,
Yes,
I want that, like, on my tombstone, like, so that I
I love that.
remember it. Because I think that, um God is incredible. And I believe he equipped incredible people to walk alongside us in flesh and blood to talk us through, whatever it is that we're going through. So I believe in both. um,
Yes.
and as somebody who believes in both, as somebody who's been educated in both realms, um, I had to really kind of stumble on my own and realize that I had to take my own advice. Um,
Mhm.
and so my husband and I went to couples counseling. I went to my own counseling. He went to his own counseling. It wasn't necessarily his thing, but he knew that it was a requirement for you know, what what happened next. So, yeah, we definitely did the work with therapy. I've continued in it. I see my therapist pretty regularly, and there will be gaps in time. Like I don't see her every week, but she knows when I call her up that like we have some work to do. And then and then I really had to lean into what it meant to have a relationship with God. I was born a pastor's kid, so I've kind of known about Jesus since like I was in the womb. And as with any relationship, it's like ebbed and flowed over the years. But as I went into and through kind of all of this, just like messiness of grief and life and marriage and everything, I really had to kind of reevaluate what I was contributing to my relationship with God and how he was like genuinely showing up. So I
Yeah.
remember there being like a New Year's Eve, my husband had ended up in the hospital from like Christmas to New Year's. And so I picked him up and I was like kind of like at my limit. Like it was like the last straw. And I remember like just sitting there in the darkness talking to God and telling him like out loud,
Mm.
if you are real and if everything that I have proclaimed about you is like actually true, I'm going to need you to show up. And I'm going to need you to show up in ways that like I get it. Right. And so the next day I like opened my Bible and an empty notebook and I just kind of really started just like reading with the intention of seeking him, and kind of writing down stuff as things popped out to me as different verses sort of caught my attention as I started to notice like scripture showing up more in my day-to-day life. I started recognizing who God has always been. Like I wasn't discovering anything new about him except that I had been like too self-centered, grief-consumed, and busy to notice a lot of it. And so I really had to spend time genuinely seeking him and dedicating the time to him and our relationship that I had neglected in my own messiness of life.
Yeah. Man, that's so important. And I'm like, I need to write all those things you just said about therapist Jesus, because like I just need to put that in my bio. It was perfect. Because I love that. Because I think it is, like you were talking about, it's all the pieces that come together. Like we are multiple faceted. Like we have a spirit, we have our body, so our physical, our emotional, our mental, our relational, our all those pieces come together to make us who we are. So how can we think that only one thing will fix it? I mean, yeah,
Mhm.
God could definitely fix it all. He's bigger than that.
Right.
But
Right.
like you said, he gifted us people who are talented and gifted in the area of compassion and sometimes telling it like it is and all of those
Mhm.
pieces. And so I love that you said that because that's part of my own walk too, is having all of those and books and podcasts and all the pieces in
Mhm.
together to bring healing. And it's part of your healing journey. And it's a great, like all those resources are wonderful. Um, and so I think that that's an important thing for somebody to hear, that it's not just one thing. You can't just, if I want to use churchy terms, right? Pray hard enough. Um,
Right.
as I rolled my eyes as I was saying that, because they can't see this, so I needed to explain.
Mhm.
Um, and phrases like that that people have like try to cling to. And I think that that's such an important thing. And as we've talked about how, the church has felt maybe uncomfortable, what would be in a piece of advice you would give to people who maybe need help on how to handle situations? just in the mental health, area better, or just like if they're there for a friend, something that could be helpful or beneficial to them that they can learn to maybe put into practice.
Oh, so I think it's important to recognize that you don't have to be comfortable with what they're experiencing.
Yeah.
Because the reality is that they're not comfortable with what they're experiencing. That's why you're that's why you're getting glimpses of like weird emotions and grief and anger and sorrow and kind of all those things. So like you don't have to be comfortable to be able to help them. Like you had said earlier, just being a presence honestly goes way further than anything most people could come up with saying. Like, there is rarely a right thing
Yeah.
to say when the difficult things are happening. And so trying to fix it, trying to come up with that, you're just going to spin your wheels and end up being weird and awkward and possibly offensive. So
Yeah.
so I think recognizing first that you don't have to be comfortable to be the right person to step into that space is important. I also think for churches, I think intentionally having someone either on staff or in a volunteer capacity who is equipped
Mhm.
to be in those spaces, who um like professionally in some way understands the sort of intricate world of mental health and addiction and grief and loss. I think having somebody readily available who can train up other leaders, who can sort of be the one that you call upon, I think is really important. I once worked for a pastor who when I was suggesting some things, he said, "We're a church, not a community center." And it was like, wrong.
Right.
We are the community center. We should be,
Right.
and I think to have that meant like that understanding will allow people to step into your space and authentically know that they belong,
Mhm.
because people will know right away if you are just pretending to welcome them in their mess, or if you are like authentically welcoming them in and not expecting anything from them, not like made uncomfortable by whatever is happening. Like people will know that. And so I think if you have at least someone who can help generate a safe space for that,
Yeah.
would go like such a long way in allowing genuine like healing and presence to occur in your church.
Yeah. Amen. That's all I got for that, because 1000% I'm with you. Um, okay, so
Do you just want to like start a church together or something?
I
Like,
mean, technically, we do a lot of that at our church. So we actually opened a counseling center here. So
cool.
we do partner with people. So that's why I'm like, I'm with you, because our church
I love
believes
that.
in that.
Yeah.
We have a lot of passion about that. And I'm actually a board certified pastoral counselor. So that's a
Hmm.
big part of what I do. So that person on staff, that's me.
Yeah. Good.
Um,
Good. Good.
so
Yeah.
so I'm like, "Yes, I love all of this. I'm just gonna send it to everybody." No, I think it is so important, and to have the knowledge, that's something we've literally just talked at as a staff, of knowledge of different mental health things that are, going on, and we see trends of different pieces, and so to be able to be there and be able to care for people well is so, so, so important. And learning from people's experiences, learning how they're processing things, and what, what they feel like, what they're going through, what those emotions are, and being able to like allow them to express them, allow them to talk about it. All those things are so, so
Hmm.
important.
Jesus heals, but like we're called to be his hands and feet.
Yep.
So there's all sorts of healing that that needs to happen and can happen, and like we have to be able to step into that space and to create that space actually, because I don't think that the church is always where people want to go to when they're in active addiction, or when their mental health is not being managed in the way that society deems appropriate. And so I think like to really be the hands and feet of Jesus, like we have to be the ones who set the tone and who do welcome people with open arms.
Yeah. And like learning from other people's experiences, again, so important. And so I'm sure that going through this yourself has created a different perspective for you. How has that changed, like, you caring for others, doing your own ministry with friendships or even in your job? Like, how has you going through this really deep and dark time changed the way you help others?
Yeah, so, for me, I it actually is what really kind of launched the ministry that I do. Um,
Okay.
I was in seminary when all of this happened, and everyone always asked why I was in seminary, and I was working in ministry, but I didn't really know why I enrolled in, like, a Master of Divinity program. I was surrounded by local pastors in all my classes, and I knew I never, like, fit in with them. Like, it wasn't my vibe, it wasn't my calling, but I couldn't, like, pinpoint why God had, like, pushed me into, this seminary journey, and then it was during seminary that, I experienced the miscarriage, my marriage was falling apart, I just, like, there was, like, active addiction going on in my home, there was, like, all sorts of things, and I remember, like, sitting there in class and thinking, "Okay, really, but what am I doing here?" And
Ugh.
as I came through it though, and as, I didn't totally fall apart and actually, clung to God in the process, as I came out of that experience of both seminary and kind of the worst few years of life I've ever had, um, I wrote this book. It's a devotional study, and it really kind of, like, contains a lot of, like, personal stories about, you know, my mess and and kind of the glimpses of God in it. But then as I've, started going and speaking and teaching in different capacities at, like, conferences and retreats and things, what I've found is I talk about God and I proclaim who he is in such a different way now than I
Mm,
ever did before, and I credit a lot of that to the difficulties of life more than seminary, but seminary definitely helped me, like,
yeah.
tie a nice bow on it sometimes. But I was at a retreat this past weekend, and I realized that all the feedback I was getting was, "We just love how honest you are and how real and how genuinely you speak about what it means to live a life of faith in a really broken world." And I was like, "Yes, that is why I went to seminary, because I believe that I wanted to be a voice that I wish I had heard
Mm.
growing up. A
Oh,
voice that could genuinely talk about, like, how much life sucks sometimes, but
yeah,
how good God actually is through it, and not
absolutely.
just say it as, like, a bumper sticker or a Band-Aid across brokenness, but, like, to really genuinely believe that God actually is so good, and let me tell you why, and be able
Mm.
to give you the examples of really the pits that he pulled me out of, for the sake of knowing that it's okay for you to share about them too.
I love that, and I love that you're so real and honest, like you were saying, like, that's what people need. Because they need to see people
Mhm.
who are out there, like, that, the ones that are speaking, the ones that are doing that they look at and they think they have it all together. They're up there speaking, when in reality, it's like, "No, I don't have it all together. I don't get it all right. No matter how much my perfectionist mind wants to think I have to, I
Right.
don't." And so for people to see that, they're like they can relate. They can see themselves in those stories, even if their situations are different, because our emotions, we
Mhm.
have a lot of the same ones in different ways. And so to be able to see that and to hear somebody like it does take away kind of that shame of like, I'm the only one who feels this way. I'm the only one who's going through this. And if by telling your story, you can help that and help somebody to step out of that shame, that's incredible. And that's
Mhm.
amazing to use something that was messy and not fun to use something for the glory of God. And I love that. I love hearing those stories. I love hearing that. So we're kind of coming up on the end of time. It goes so fast. And then I'm like, I don't want to get off. But I wanna be respectful of your time, but I do want to end, with the question of if someone is out there listening and they are struggling, whether it's grief, whether it's depression or hopelessness, any of those things, and they're in maybe that deep, dark pit that you've been in. what would be something that you would say to them that would be good to hear?
I've talked a big game about not saying the wrong thing, so
I know. Put the
you
pressure
know,
on now. Just kidding.
I think I would say that to have genuine faith in that the depths of the darkness, you do not have to fake it till you make it.
Mm,
That being real and showing up honestly with God is the best choice you can make. And so I've told people before, if you feel angry, scream it at him.
ah,
If you feel sad, cry with him. If you are excited, celebrate with him. Like, he will bring the confetti, he will show up with a box of tissues, he will, like, bring a hammer for you to smash some things if you need to let out anger. Like, I believe that he will show up in whatever you are feeling and experiencing. So, my genuine advice is always, like, stop pretending and just, like, actually take what you're feeling to his presence, because like, it will never go wrong. I promise. And if people have failed you, don't let that be a reflection of who God is.
yeah.
So if you need to bypass people, do that and just go step into his presence for a while.
Yes. That's, I think, the perfect way to sum this whole episode up, because it is such great advice to be real and raw. That's what we've kind of talked about this whole time: being transparent, be vulnerable, and being that with God is one of the first steps we can do. And then you can reach out to somebody who you can trust, a safe person, right?
Mhm.
To to
Yes.
to talk to and to walk through those emotions, because we're not meant to do it alone. We're not meant to be here by ourselves.
Mhm.
So reach out to
No.
people. It's not a bad thing to reach out for help, even though our
No.
minds want to tell us.
And if right, right. And if you don't have a safe person, like, slide into my
Yeah,
DMs. I'll talk to you.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
no judgment, and I'm happy to be a listening ear, a sounding board, and somebody who will always point you back to the goodness and grace of God. And also go right along with you. The world sucks sometimes. And I can hold that space.
Yeah.
I can hold that space with you. So
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for being on here and sharing your story and just your heart. I appreciate it so much, and I've learned a lot from this.
thank you for having a space like this. It's, I'm sure, changing lives and doing good work.
Thanks for listening to Real Talk with Megan. Remember, you are not alone. Seeking help is a sign of strength, and taking care of your mental health is just as important as taking care of your physical health. We'll see you next time for more honest conversations.